This is Horror Podcast.
Welcome to This is Horror, a podcast for readers, writers, and creators. I'm Michael David Wilson, and every episode alongside my co-host Bob Pastorella, we chat with the world's best writers about writing, life lessons, creativity, and much more. Today we are chatting to Ronald Malfi, who won the This Is Horror Novel of the Year 2024 for Small Town Horror. Now, as well as Small Town Horror, we talk about Ron's early life, his writing influences, his writing routine, and a lot more. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Ronald Malfi, he is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of horror novels and thrillers, including Small Town Horror, December Park, Come With Me, and Black Mouth, to name but a few. He is most recognized for his haunting literary style and memorable characters. And Malfi's dark fiction has gained acceptance among readers of all genres. When he's not writing, he is fronting the rock band Via. So that is a little bit about Ronald Malfi. Before we get him on the show, a quick advert break.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This Is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio. From the host of This Is Horror Podcast comes a dark thriller of obsession, paranoia, and voyeurism. After relocating to a small coastal town, Brian discovers a hole that gazes into his neighbor's bedroom. Every night she dances and he peeps. Same song, same time, same wild and mesmerizing dance. But soon Brian suspects he's not the only one watching, and she's not the only one being watched. Their watching is The Wicker Man meets Body Double with a splash of Suspiria. They're Watching by Michael David Wilson and Bob Pastorella is available from thisishorror.co.uk, Amazon, and wherever good books are sold.
Okay, with that said, here it is. It is Ronald Malfi on This Is Horror. Ronald, welcome to This Is Horror.
What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to have you here, and we are going to be talking about Small Town Horror, which won the This Is Horror Novel of the Year award for 2024. But before we do that, I want to go all the way back to your early life lessons. So I'm wondering, what did you learn growing up?
Nothing. I didn't learn anything growing up. What I learned growing up. I mean, I'm the oldest of four kids. My parent, we grew up in, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. We were, because my mom had her hands full with a lot of kids, you had to occupy yourself. And I was an avid reader, so I gravitated towards, books. I loved horror movies, music. I was a big music guy. You can see my guitars back there. My early life was really spent dealing with family, negotiating with family, working, becoming very, I'm very close with my parents, my siblings. But it was also an exercise in finding myself and where I found joy doing things on my own. Because a lot of times when you're in a big family, it, you seek out those moments where you can just be by yourself. And I did a lot of stuff like that. I mean, writing, drawing, just learning to play music or just listening to music, anything to kind of like escape and be alone for a bit and with, and with your thoughts. And my dad was a Secret Service agent. So we traveled, he relocated a lot when we were younger. So I lived in about 4 or so places before I was like the age of 10. I know some military folks have got me beat, but for me, it seemed like a lot. And then we ultimately settled in Maryland. And, from 10 years old on, this has been my home. And most of my fiction is set here. I know this area, inside and out. The people, the culture, the climate, the vibe of living here. I'm right on the Chesapeake Bay, so it's got that kind of lackadaisical boater vibe thing going. I don't put on pants if I don't have to. So I mean, that sums me up right there. I think I gave you everything about my life, right? You could it's a very short autobiography, but yeah.
Yeah,
Bob,
and when
if you're gonna laugh that loud, Bob, you got to unmute yourself. I can see you. That
there it is. And I mean, when you were kind of growing up and you were absorbed in art and music, what were some of the stories and the films and indeed some of the bands that you were listening to?
I mean, everything was all over the place. As far as bands that I was listening to, man, I listened to, like, I'm 48. So like growing up, I listened to everything from the 1950s on. Like I was listening to Jerry Lee Lewis when I was in high school, just because I was fascinated with the sound of the piano. I love 90s alternative rock, like grunge, when that movement hit, that like really spoke to me. I love instrumental jazz. I listened to a lot of that when I was a kid. Classical music, movie scores. I listened to everything. I remember, and I would get fixated. I used to write a lot when I was younger too, and some of the things I wrote were sort of first drafts of what years later became some of the novels of mine. And like I wrote a book called The Narrows. But when I was a kid, like in high school, the first draft of that book was The Narrows. It had a different name at the time. But I remember writing it furiously, listening to John Cougar Mellencamp's Scarecrow album, front to back, over and over again on repeat. So the music was all over the place. Movies were, man, I loved 80s horror. I loved 80s slasher films, 80s, anything from Gremlins to the movie House with William Catt, everything from that. I my greatest joy was like when Mom said, "Hey, we can go to the video store on a Saturday night, pick out whatever you want." It wasn't even Blockbuster Video; it was a local place called Errol's Video, and they had these big styrofoam containers these movies were in. I just remember like looking at all the movie covers, and I'd just summon the courage to pick the one cover that scared the hell out of me. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit through this movie and watch it. So I loved all that stuff. And then with books, Stephen King was like my gateway drug to reading really like adult fiction. I was a kid, and the first book of his I read was Eyes of the Dragon, which is a weird place to start, but I didn't know anything about him. And then I read a couple of his other books after that. And then I just started reading anything I get my hands on. I mean, my grandparents had a box of like Reader's Digest versions of books in their garage. I read those. I remember finding a copy of Lolita. I read that. I was like 12. I didn't even understand it, but I would just devour these books. So like all of that stuff, I think it was very eclectic, because I think in each of those avenues, I was always looking for to max out the input, right? Like I wanted to get as much of what I could that was out there in me to kind of learn from it, and it just excited me. I really enjoyed. I always love to read. I love to listen to music, and movies were always a blast. So yeah, I mean, everything is the answer.
Yeah, I remember those Reader's Digest books, and when I was younger, just like you, I was reading them, and I didn't realize that they were like condensed versions of the books. And I would reread a book going, there's a lot more in this paperback than there was in the Reader's Digest version. They skimp me.
I do, and I have a love-hate relationship with that, because I did find a bunch of them early and read a lot, and then when I learned what condensed or abridged novels were, I'm like, well, fuck this, like, holy shit. Yeah, I mean, and the same thing with audiobooks. I don't know if they do that anymore, but it used to be back in the day, like, recorded books would put out these books on tape, and if you weren't careful and didn't read the binding, you didn't know if you were getting an abridged book. And I remember listening to Carl Sagan's Contact, and I didn't realize it was abridged until I also then got the novel and read it. I'm like, what is this nonsense? Who does this? What monster cuts out pages from a book? Yeah. So
I think that
but it was fine.
I think that with like some of the audiobooks, I think like Peter Straub's The Throat.
Yeah.
I think there's an abridged version of that. I think that's the only audiobook version of it. And so it's like The Throat in like 4 hours. I'm like,
oh boy,
dude, this is an 800-page novel. There's no way, so how do you do that?
That's monstrous.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate that we don't see a lot of that these days. There's not so many abridged versions when you go in on Audible or whatever audiobook
now you
service
can play them faster, so you don't need the abridged version. You can just hear them talk quicker.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it comes to the same thing.
Yeah, I wonder, how on earth they make the decisions, which parts to cut out, because it's like, well, this has already been through an editorial process. If there were things to cut, it was cut.
Exactly. Who knows? You're at the behest of some knucklehead over at Recorded Books going, you know what? I got lunch in an hour. Let me, I don't know. They don't need this chapter. Like, I don't trust it. So read your bindings, kids.
Yeah. And to have been writing from such an early age and to have written, a version of The Narrows in high school, I mean, does this mean that you always wanted to be a writer? Was that something that you set your mind to from an early age?
I did. I got my first typewriter at a yard sale when I was like 10 or 11 or so, and I just wrote short stories on it, and those short stories progressively got longer and longer. And I remember when I hit the double digits, and I remember when I wrote my first 100 pager, and making my poor, parents and my friends read this stuff. And, but no, I did always want to be a writer. And then when I got older, there are a couple of books of mine that I wrote when I was in high school. The first draft of The Narrows is one of them. Another book, December Park, I wrote when I was originally, the first draft of that was in high school. It was different title, different story, totally revamped, but the seed of what that was written back then. And really why I wrote December Park was it's just about a group of friends who are trying to track down a killer in their town. And I wanted my friends to read the stuff I was writing. And, these are high school boys. They don't want to read, especially over summer break. So I put them all in the book. And I'm like, you're all a character. Read the book now. So that's how I got them to read it. But yeah, I did. I've always wanted to write. I went to, by the time I graduated college, I had, I don't remember, anywhere from 4 to 6 novel-length manuscripts written, and I just chose what I thought was the best one and shopped it around and eventually sold it to a small press, and that kind of set me on, sort of the path of doing it. I kind of half-heartedly joke and say I was able to achieve that because I was too naive to think it was impossible. Like, I just assumed, well, I'm going to be a writer someday, so I'll just get there, and I stupidly did somehow, not realizing that it's impossible to do. But yeah, so it was I think had I been a little more worldly and intelligent and maybe just even older, I would have I could have given it up, but I started so young that it never dawned on me that I wouldn't be a writer. So I guess kudos to the stupidity of youth.
Well, what you're saying here seems to be a recurring pattern that we hear with people where there is naivety. And it's like if we realized the absolute amount of work and the relative lack of payment, at least early on,
Mm-hmm.
none of us would set out to be a writer. It is a foolish endeavor. And yet here we are.
Yeah. And I remember, I remember thinking when I was younger, late teens, early 20s, college age, whatever, if I could just survive writing and have that be my thing, then I would be very happy. And I recognize that it's tough to do. At the time I recognized it, but I also, like I said, I was naive. I didn't understand really what it entailed. And you see these other writers doing it. You read books written by authors you like that are about writers, and these writers are always successful. So it just seems like, well, that's the way to go. And to this day, like I'll talk to, I'll go to a book signing and I'll meet readers and they'll come to the table and they talk to me as if they assume I live in a castle somewhere and I'm just pumping out these books and life is grand. It's hard. It's, it isn't the glory that I think people from the outside think it has. And it is a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of, it does become a job, and you lose perspective of the love you had for it to a degree. And I know I'm sounding a little jaded now, but from when I was younger. So there are moments where now, at my age, where I do take a pause and go, hey, look, I'm in a bookstore, I'm signing books. There's a whole shelf over there in the Barnes and Noble. It got all my books on the shelf, and 15-year-old Ron would be doing backflips right now to know this is where he ended up. So I try not to get too jaded and go, well, now I got to drive here. Like we were talking earlier before the show starts, I got to get up early and I got to drive to this place and I got to go here and I got to do this event. It is work. It becomes a job, but I try not to lose sight of, I'm also toting around the kid inside me who is very happy to be able to do this. I'm very lucky to be able to do this as well. So, yeah.
What do you think the defining moment or the defining release was for you where this became a job, or where you thought, shit, I'm not just telling stories. There are other elements to this career.
I think it's two parts. I think it's a gradual process that you kind of look back on and go, oh, okay, yeah, that's how it went. But there's also a sudden moment too, where, for me in my career, where I went from doing a lot of small press work to doing, getting mass market deals and stuff like that. And the money changes and the sales change, you start to see the books all over the place, and you recognize that you've achieved a different level. And as just a simple guy who just loves to write and loves to tell stories, but also wanted to be a writer, a published novelist, there are those mile markers where it's like, okay, well, I got my first, royalty check that's more than $10, or I got or I walk into a bookstore and there's the book on the shelf. I didn't have to put it there myself. It's there, there are all those little things, your first foreign sale, your first limited edition, the first, all of that stuff. And it's, so that's what I mean by it's all kind of gradual, but it's also kind of sudden too, when you think in the moment of going, oh wow, I've arrived, because now here I am. I remember going to like the book expo in New York at the Javits Center in, I want to say 2009 or so. I had a book called Shamrock Alley that was released, and the publisher sent me there. It was my first expense paid trip to New York City as a writer on the government's or on the publisher's dole. And I'm like, this is great. And I walk in there and there's a giant banner of me over the table. And I'm like, shit, all right, I've arrived. Maybe I'll buy myself a sports jacket with suede patches and smoke a pipe. I don't know. But like, it was moments like that where you kind of, because you're working, I try not to get lost in it, but it's take a breath, look around, and go, it's kind of cool that life has, and put me here in this moment in time. I think it's neat.
And so we are now going to fast forward about 16 books because we have to talk about Small Town. Look, this is the abridged interview. This is
That's right.
The abridged right here, because we need to talk about small town horror.
Let's do it.
And I mean, I understand that typically when you're writing, you don't plan your stories. Yeah,
Right.
You have an idea and you go with it. But perhaps what might be distinct is, if I have done my research correctly, this one started off as a pitch for television. So I'm wondering, what was your why for writing Small Town Horror, and what did that process look like?
So you're right. It did start. So I my book contract obligated me to write a book a year. So I was writing a book at the time that I was also pitching TV series. At the time I was writing the novel Black Mouth, and that is about a group of children who are taken advantage of and manipulated by an adult figure, and the trauma that causes them in their adult life. But they're innocent kids who are manipulated and do something terrible, but they're essentially innocent. And as I'm writing this, I am also writing the pilot script and doing the pitches for Small Town Horror. Small Town Horror got picked up by, at the time, I think it was Fox 21, and Disney picked it up through Warren Littlefield's company. And I wrote the pilot for it. They brought on a co-showrunner. We worked on the script. I had a story outline. And my idea with Small Town Horror was, because I was writing Black Mouth, I took that same concept for Small Town Horror, but as I was writing Black Mouth, I thought, what if these kids weren't innocent? What if they were terrible people? And that's what Small Town Horror basically became. So when the TV show ultimately fell apart and all the rights reverted back to me, and I wrote Small Town Horror as a novel, that's how I pursued it. I made it like the sister novel to Black Mouth, where I almost look at them as like photo negatives of each other, where here's the story that it unfolds if these kids are good kids that are wrongfully manipulated and groomed. But here's the story if these kids are just terrible people. And it's a similar storyline, right? And I know I've had readers who have picked up both books back to back, and they're like, "Oh, Malfi he's using the same plot over." Yeah, I did. It's on purpose, fellas. It's on purpose. It's the same idea told from two different lenses. And in fact, I think there's a scene where the characters in Small Town Horror do their terrible thing and refer to the kids from Black Mouth over in West Virginia, saying, "Oh, well, this happened to these kids when this happened." So I'm nodding to myself, going, "Yeah, I recognize." But I'm my goal in exploring the human psyche of both of those books is completely different. So that's where it comes about. But yeah, it did start out as a TV show. A lot of cooks in the kitchen. I could see the wheels coming off, and I was kind of happy that it went back to me so I could write the book the way I wanted to write it. So yeah, it was an experience.
And when you got those rights back and you sat down to write it as a novel, I'm wondering, having that pitch already, having that outline, having done so much work on it, did this make it restrictive, or did it make it freeing in terms of, because it sounds like it was very different to how you would ordinarily write a novel?
It was very different. So what I wrote for the TV show was a pilot episode. I think it was an hour long, so 60 something pages of a script. And then a season outline of what season 1 would look like, and then a briefer, more condensed version of what season 2 would look like, because that's what they kind of want to see. So I had that outline. So when the rights came back to me, I thought, for once, wow, I've actually got an outline to work off of. This is going to be easy. I threw the whole thing out because it was stifling. It didn't go in the direction I wanted it to go. Nothing felt organic. The characters didn't feel real. I sweated over, like I kept forcing myself to use it. And I'm like, until I realized oh, I don't have to use this. I didn't. Once I realized that, it felt free, and I went about the process like I normally do, which is to make shit up as I go. But the beats were kind of all there. I understood the characters. I understood where the story wanted to take them. I know I had 5 main characters. They're dealing with a tragedy in their teen years, and I knew that I was representing each of those 5 characters. Each one of them was one of the 5 stages of grief, so I wrote them that way in the novel. Those elements were there from the outline stage that I had to present to sell the show. But when it came time to writing the book, man, I threw it all out the window because I just cannot write like that. It just like you said, it just feels. I think it was Alfred Hitchcock who says he used to meticulously storyboard his movies before he shot them, and then he hated shooting the movies because it's already done in his head. Like he's already made the movie in his mind after doing all that prerequisite work. So that's how I feel about outlining. I just can't do it. If I outline everything, I feel like it's done. I don't need to write the book, so I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way.
Yeah.
I can't. It is very restrictive. Now, I'm also very gracious to be able to have an open mind. I've collaborated with Michael before on They're Watching, who he will not work without an outline. And so any outlining skills that I've learned through him. It's his fault. But but it's I don't know. It's something about the previous project I was working on. I did an outline on it, and I started the story like way before the outline even started. Yeah. So I was like, I want to see what these kids look like younger.
But I also think that if you're going to collaborate with somebody, to some degree, there needs to be some kind of outline so you're on the same page. A good friend of mine, Greg Gaffune, great author. I love his work. Years ago, we attempted to collaborate on a novel. We got about 150, 200 pages deep into this book, but we both don't outline, and we're both writing like a different character in each chapter. And it got to the point, like when I write a book by myself, I recognize that there may be a moment where I have to go, all of this is crap, and I have to rewrite 250 pages. And I've done that. It's a different feeling when you have to say that to the other guy you're working with. So it got, without having an outline or stuff, it becomes daunting. And I recognize the need for some sort of, roadmap or primer just to say, hey, here's where we're going. But I'm also a dick to work with, so I don't blame Greg for being like, it was a great story idea. We may revisit it someday. We keep talking. Every time I talk to him, he's like, "Oh man, we gotta pick it up." But yeah, that was fun. He's a great writer, Greg. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I think too, when you call a book small town horror, you create a set of expectations, not just in terms of the type of novel, but also to a point in terms of how the story might play out. But then in this, you proceed to challenge and subvert the vast majority of these expectations. So did you know from the off that you were going to be this playful? And if not, at what point during the writing did this become apparent?
Michael, I love you for asking that. That it was exactly my intention with that is to subvert first of all, I was shocked that title hadn't been used for a book yet. And it's a subgenre of itself. But instead of like being so saccharine and sentimental and falling into what we think that is, I wanted to use that as the trope doorway to say, you think you know what this story is about, but you don't. And and that kind of, it was fun to do. And that was totally my intention. I love that idea of just taking those. And I do that with a lot of my stuff where I'll take a concept that, I think it's what resonates. I see is that you take something that's familiar, but you add a unique twist to it that makes it its own thing. So people are comfortable with what it is. They think they understand it. They follow you along, and then you throw them for a loop somewhere in that process where they go, oh, well, I'm surprised by this. It's interesting. I didn't expect that. And that's kind of, and I do that a lot with some of my stuff where I do kind of lean into those tropes, so much so that it's like I'm almost winking at you going, I'm not really doing this, right? I'm recognizing that I'm setting you up, So, and Small Town Horror is a perfect example of that. That is exactly what I did with that, with the title, with how that book presents, with the outcome of it, all the twists in it. Everything should go against type, even though I've named it the most generic title you could name a book. That was the goal. Yeah, I love that you asked that question, Michael. I love it.
And so I wonder as well, I mean, you say about the title on one hand, it's generic, on one hand, it's, instantly recognizable, to the point where, you were surprised. How has there not been a book with this title? I mean, it sounds like it's the title of one of the first stories to ever exist, doesn't it?
There are like 50,000 Reddit threads where you can go through it. It's like, I'm looking for small town horror, like as a genre, and the first recommendation is try Ronald Malfi's Small Town Horror. It actually has that title in the title. Like, that's the title. So yeah, it's like when John Carpenter realized there was no movie called Halloween, right? It's like, wow, no one used that. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I guess Friday the 13th is another one. Has to be.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, man.
Peter Straub's Ghost Story. I mean,
well, so Straub went on a kick. So he did Ghost Story, and then he kind of said, well, you know what, I could lean into that trope as well. So then he did mystery, right? So now he's like, I'm just going to subgenre my book titles. I think it was Straub. I love Straub. He was probably my favorite horror writer. I am. And I don't know what this Talisman book 3 is going to look like, if his name is on the cover just out of sentimentality or if he actually wrote anything. But I'm saddened that as far as I know, we're not getting another Straub novel. So the guy was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I certainly wanted to bring up Peter Straub because, I mean, the influence is so apparent within your work. And I think, much like Straub, you could remove the supernatural element from Small Town Horror and the story would stay largely intact.
Yeah.
And I think, too, that this is so character-driven. It's about character dynamics. I mean, it's very much about family dynamics. You've got Ruth and Robert. You've got Dale and Cynthia. Tia and her daughter, Tig, not Tia. Who the fuck is Tia? Tig and her daughter, Bonnie. So, I mean, a lot of this is about the family dynamics and the characters. And I imagine that, of course, came early, but I imagine also that might have made it a logistical nightmare to track when you're, pantsing it, to use the terminology.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it was Straub who said, I'm not interested in writing books about ghosts. I'm interested in writing books about people who believe in ghosts. And that's a distinction for me as well. Like I and you're right. I do think a lot of my books can kind of, you pull the horror element out of it or whatever the supposed horror elements are, and the story still hangs together. And that's important for me because I feel for these characters. I feel for the story that's going on, and I want them to be their own entity that stands on their own. Just because the stories take a dark bend shouldn't lessen their regency as people in a story. I meant to say agency, but yes, regency I suppose works. That doesn't lessen their agency in the story, so I do take a lot from. Look, I get a lot of Stephen King comparisons online and whatever, and I do tend to write in that wheelhouse. But Straub was my biggest influence. I mean, reading his stuff, Stephen King taught me that books are fun and scary and a good time. Straub taught me, hey, you could also do this in a book, and that as a writer, you go, wow, I didn't know you could just cut the leash and be anyone you want to be as an author to write this story any way you want to write it. And I love that about his work. The guy was a poet. He was just brilliant. So yeah, I do take a lot of influence from Straub.
Yeah, I can understand the Stephen King comparisons, but it's almost too easy to make a Stephen King comparison.
Everything is a Stephen King comparison. You write about kids riding a bicycle down the road, and it's like, well, that's like Stephen King. I'm like, man, I'm 48 years old. My friends and I rode bicycles down the road. That's what we did. If I write a quasi-autobiographical novel and the main character is based on me and he's going to be a writer, it's not ripping on Stephen King. It's ripping on me because that's what I became. So yeah, it's all like, I get there's a readership out there that tends to be fairly myopic and feel that, well, they only read this person in this genre and that's all they know. And they don't, everything is related to Stephen King in some fashion in their eyes. Well, you have a teapot. It must be from the store in Needful Things. So this book sounds like Needful Things. It's like, no, it's not. It could also be fucking Beauty and the Beast, man. Like, I'm not, but I don't know. That's just my take. Bob, you got to unmute. If you're going to laugh hysterically, I'm throwing out gold here, Bob. I get the comparison thing. But it's funny because I never saw that in my own writing. I always had other influences. I'm a huge Ernest Hemingway fan, so I try to, but I don't write like Hemingway. I'm much more verbose. But what I take from Hemingway and what I appreciate is his whole iceberg theory of telling a story. Hey, show them the tip of the iceberg. Let the reader fill in the rest. Right? Don't over explain. Don't hammer these ideas into people's heads. Keep it vague. Let it move on. And you know what? If you lose some people along the way, well, they weren't meant to be on the ride in the first place, maybe. But the people who get it really, really get it, and that's the point. That's what I'm looking for. It's that kind of connection. So yeah. No, look, King is king, man. Like, I wouldn't be a writer if there was no Stephen King, but I don't personally see the connection between my work and his work. Even though I wrote a story for that, I wrote a story for the Stephen King anthology. I said, well, I guess I'm in it now. But yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah, I think Stephen King is in every horror writer's DNA, which is why it almost becomes a bit futile and too obvious to point it out. But I mean, in terms of more interesting comparisons, Gabino Iglesias described you as horror's Faulkner, and Josh Malaman described you as a modern-day Algernon Blackwood. I'm wondering, in terms of those comparisons, which do you think resonates with you more in terms of your writing aesthetic right now in 2026?
I love Josh's thing about Blackwood, but Josh is crazy. I love Josh. I love Josh. When the Faulkner quote from Gabino touched me a little bit because it's kind of going back to what you said. These are, genre aside, these are stories about people, situations, relationships, and over what I, for a lot of my books is sort of an epic scale. And that's really what he did, Faulkner and Gabino. So for him to say something like that was kind of, it was touching to me. Like I appreciated it. But I won't lie to you. I pretended to read all of Faulkner's books in high school. It wasn't until years later I actually read them as a human being. So I don't. Same with Steinbeck. Same with Great Gatsby. All those guys. I had no interest when I was younger, and I went back and I read them later in life and loved all of that stuff. So yeah, I don't know, they're very generous. I'm friends with these guys, so they're very nice. They're very kind to me. Very kind.
I was going to say, I always kind of wonder if Faulkner or Blackwood were alive today, what would they be writing? Would they be writing the same type of stories. And I feel like that they would, but maybe they would. I don't know. It's hard to say. It would be how would you see that? How could you see like William Faulkner writing today?
Well, I don't know if they'd write the same stuff today. I think a better question is, what would you want to see them write today? If those artists were alive now, if those writers were alive now, what would you want to see them do? And I think you could look at like careers like, Toni Morrison, Barbara Kingsolver, people whose careers have spanned and have touched on different cultural touchstones that they've witnessed personally in their lives, where they can address these things in their books. I think, to me, that's fascinating, and I would like to see any. We're talking hypothetical, but just take any author of that ilk and just put them down. I mean, just like a Kurt Vonnegut. Like, what would a new Kurt Vonnegut novel look like right now in today's society? Or Thomas Pynchon. I know I didn't read his last book, but there was a period of his career where he was, it was of its time, and I'd like to see.
Right. He was trying to get to our time within a decade or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again,
within a decade or two. Yeah.
A brilliant writer. I mean, Mason Dixon is one of Gravity's Rainbow. V, which I believe is his first novel, is my favorite of his books. They're fucking bizarre, but they're great, and I love writers like that, and as a writer, like when I was growing up and stuff, and I would read all this stuff, I would try to emulate styles. Like I'd go, okay, well, all right, Chuck Palahniuk writes like this, very, very concise, very terse, very ironic and witty. Okay, let's try some of that, see how that works. It wasn't really my voice, and after a while, what you do as a writer, it's the same thing with being a musician, is you gravitate, you take in everything, you try to play, you do everything, and then you go, all right, here's the elements of what I've taken in that speak to me. And this is the sound that my personal music becomes. This is the tone that my personal writing takes on, based on everything I've learned before them. The standing on the shoulders of giants theory, right? It's that. It's what we're taking from who came before us and piecing it together and making it our own thing. And it's kind of there's a beauty in doing that as an artist, is being able to look at those things and to sort of cultivate from an amalgam of sources your own floral arrangement, I guess. However you want to phrase it. I don't know.
It's like we use, like playing guitar, for example. You learn through technique, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to imitate your idols, And I played guitar when I was younger. I can't play much. I have carpal tunnel, and I like to be able to hold a fork when I eat. So I don't play as often as I'd like to, but it's like when I was younger playing in bands, and you see some kid like playing Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen, and you're like going, dude, it's a chord. It's just a chord. With the other finger stuff you're doing, it looks great. And if that's your style, that's your style, but you got to know the technique. And it's like we learn on technique to develop style. And same thing goes for writing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, look, and to go off of your analogy, I've played music for years. My first band, I don't think there's a first band out there that didn't start by playing a cover song, right? Nobody comes up and just learns the guitar and goes, well, I just wrote this, let's play. Everybody plays something else, right? And I'm one of these guys, I listen to like audiobooks of like, the autobiographies of different musicians and stuff. I'm fascinated by the first songs that they learn to play from other music. Like it's such a window into them as artists, who the first artists were that they copied before they became their own thing. And it's telling, it shows just a sense of that pure, zealous eagerness to grab whatever's out there in the ether and take it all in and go, okay, I can hear everything, I can play everything. Where do I sit? What do I want to do? What speaks to me the most? And that sort of thing. And that's why I think I did. I listened to a lot of different music. I liked a lot of different music. The first song my band played, and would have been 1994, so I was in high school. The first song my band played was "Twist and Shout," the Beatles version, in '94. That was the first thing we learned, But what does that say for we weren't playing fucking Green Day. It was just whatever spoke to all of us and goes, okay, well, here's how our hands work on these guitars, and here's how we make this sound, and I'm fascinated by it, and that's why, like, if I walk down a mall, if there are still malls anywhere, I don't know, and some person's playing a piano. This is a true story. I'm going to throw you this out. This is an exclusive for you right now. But I walked down a mall years ago. There's a woman playing a piano. I am fascinated by the sound of piano. I will stop and I will watch somebody play the piano, and I can stand there for hours until somebody grabs my sleeve and says, we got to go. And I'm watching her play. I'm standing there for like a weird amount of time. She keeps looking over at me and smiling, looking over and smiling. And finally, at some point, I'm like, all right, I'm creeping this lady out. I'm going to leave. I turn to leave. She stops playing and she goes, Ron, I was your creative writing teacher in high school. You don't remember me? So she's also the piano player at the mall. Now, this was like a gazillion years ago. But wow, I mean, I'm like, look, this person was my writing teacher, and now I'm just infatuated with, I should have married her now that I think about it. She was like 80, but man, those fingers, when they were working, they were working. I don't know. That was a roundabout kind of way to get there.
What an absolutely surreal experience, and kind of feels serendipitous, really, with you being a musician and a writer. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how does Via fit in to your life and to your creative process? I mean, to take it, I suppose, really back to bare bones, what does a typical week or a typical month look like for you? Where does the music fit in? Where does the writing fit in?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a typical week. I could narrow it down to a month. I mean, the band rehearses every Monday. We play minimal shows in our region. We're basically a regional act. So we'll get calls to open for nationals when they come through Baltimore, DC, Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, those areas. And we'll take those shows. We also headline our own shows. We own our own record label, so we put out our own albums through our own stuff. And as far as, so the traveling for the band and the playing shows, that's the fun stuff. The rehearsals are the rehearsals. We're recording we're about to record our third album right now. So we're in the writing stage of these songs. I primarily write the music for the band and the lyrics. But I say that tongue in cheek. Some songs I bring to the band, I'm like, here's what it is, and that's what it stays. Some songs I bring to the band, they're like, and they rework it, and it becomes a completely different animal, which is great because that, I'm writing books on the side. And it's a very insular, process. So I like the creative involvement of other people with the band. My brother is the drummer. I love he's my best friend. I love the guy to death. My other two best friends are the guitar player and the bass player in the band. I mean, it's the four of us, that have been doing this it's been actually that this band has been together for 10 years this year. So we're doing like a lot of 10-year anniversary stuff, but there's not a lot of crossover between the book writing and the music. They actually serve to distract from one another, but in a good way. If I hit a snag in writing a novel, I'll set it aside and I'll play guitar for a week, and that for whatever reason frees up the train tracks to go in a different direction, and the book starts to flow. But I get a lot of good creative stuff out of the music that way. Vice versa. Like, I'm jammed up with the music. I'm like, screw this, but my head's boiling. I sit down, I hammer out a bunch of chapters, and the book moves forward. So they both kind of move incrementally with each other, and feed off each other, even though there are not a lot of creative crossover between the two. I'll say this. I tend to write my novels, I tend to write my books and stuff with a focus on meter, measure, beat, how language sounds, and that's a music thing, and that's what I learned from that. Conversely, when I write music, the lyrics are the last thing I come up with. It's generally rhythm, melody, chord structure, how the band sounds, and I will sing from day one over whatever we're playing, but it's nonsense. I'm singing garbled nothing, and it's just to get the sibilance and the cadence and the melody in there, right? And then later, like sometimes in the studio, I'm like, all right, here's the words, and I drop them in. I know that sounds sort of reductive for somebody who writes for a living, but musically, that seems to be the way I work. I have never, ever written lyrics to a song that hasn't existed. Like, I know some people do that. I can't do that. That's like writing a fortune cookie. That's poetry. I don't know. I need to have the music, and I need to hear that rhythm with it. And normally it all comes together, and then I plug the lyrics in after that. But I'm sure inside me there's one thing that's working correctly that is spawning off all this stuff. I just don't know. I don't know where it is. I don't know where to find it. It's probably under this meaty section in my rib cage. that booze soaked a lung part. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh man, if you're gonna get to that, that's gonna be a very different type of horror. Just like cutting yourself open to find the creativity. But,
that is correct.
I mean, you mentioned your friendship with Josh Malerman before, and of course, there's a lot of commonalities between the two of you. And so, I mean, as well as Josh being a successful horror writer, he's got his band, The High Strung, which begs the question, really. Do you think are we going to see a gig between Veer and The High Strung at some point? Could
everybody asks about this? Everybody asks about this. There's nothing planned. I'm always down for whatever. It's there's more involved than the general public realizes about getting a band to schlep halfway across the country for one gig. But Josh is in inimitable talent. The guy is brilliant. He is the world is better for Josh Malerman because he is just doing stuff that people just did not think of to do until Josh Malerman did it. I think the guy is great. And he is a blast to hang out with, and he's just a good dude. So yeah, and you set up a gig, and Veer and The High Strung will come out and do it. Nah, he's a great guy.
You heard it here.
Yeah. That's right, Josh.
Double bill of the century.
Yeah. Well, I mean, something that you do tremendously well with your writing is create dread and frighten the reader. And I mean, I suppose it's no more apparent than in small town horror, where you've got a curse and you've got a ghost element. So I'm wondering, how do you go about creating dread?
I don't know how I do it. I know that I am, as a reader, if you want to turn me off real fast, tell me your book is a fast-paced action romp I'm like, nah, that's not why I read books. I read books for language. I read books for atmosphere. I read books for character. I read books for a sense of plot and story. And by plot, I don't mean plot. I mean, let it unfold naturally. And I appreciate all of those aspects in writing. If I want a car chase, I'll fucking watch the fucking Born Identity movie. I don't know. But like, I love language. I love a surety of voice, if that makes any sense. I love an author who has such a surety of voice, where you are just kind of hypnotized by the language they use, and they will drag you through any story that they want to tell. Those are the things that appeal to me. So I think as a writer, because I like that sort of stuff, it's ingrained in me to emulate it or just naturally do it that way. But like, I think you, if you want the full impact of, especially in the horror genre, if you want a full impact of telling a story that's going to frighten, disturb, unsettle, make you uncomfortable, whatever it is, you need to lay the foundation in order to lull your reader into following you along, so now you can make them uncomfortable. I hear over and over again, this book wasn't scary. Well, look, we're all freaking adults. Like, I'm not scared by books. Books don't scare me. Nothing scares me. But I will say I've read a lot of books that unsettle me, that create this sense of dread, that make me uncomfortable, that make me turn those pages quicker. There's no jump scare in a novel. I'm not turning the page and going, the clown appears. No, I'm not doing that. It's so really for what we do in this genre, for that to work most effectively, it's not to be scary. It's to create this impending sense of doom, of dread, of atmosphere that the reader doesn't even realize they're now sucked into. And now you've created an emotion for that reader that settles on them like cobwebs when they're reading these books. And that is an effective book. Don't give me your Facebook posts and your Reddit posts about, oh, this book didn't scare me. Well, you're a fucking adult. A book is not going to scare you. Get out of that. You're looking for the wrong thing. What you're looking for is to be sucked in by emotive writing that's going to carry you along. And what's frightening about that is you realize you've let a part of yourself get sucked into that, like hypnotism. Because that's how they do it. And those are the writers I love to read. And that's the stuff I try to do. So I don't know. I can't say better than that, but that's my take.
Yeah. One of the things that I think your major strength is that you give us characters that we give a damn about. And if you don't give a damn about the character, then you can't scare the character. And therefore, if you don't have any empathy, you're not going to get scared either. And so it all has to go hand in hand. And it starts with the language. It starts with the foundation, like you said, but you've got to have people that you give a shit about in your stories. Or you can't, if you can't scare them, you'll never scare the reader. And I love it when a character gets scared, because I can't help but to go, oh shit, things are getting real now, oh wow, I can't believe what's about to happen. I dread what I think is about to happen, because I care about these people like they're real people, and that's a talent, and you got it. That's one thing I found in all your stories.
No, I appreciate it, but it's there's an element to write, and you're right, Bob. But there's an element to writing when you're doing that the writer needs to be cognizant of what it is, that how they present the material to your reader, and through the character's lens that invite, because the character is the doorway for your reader to experience those emotions, right? And I equate it to this. I hate when horror movies will show the main character doing something. They're washing dishes in the kitchen, and in the background there's a dark shadow that floats there, and it moves past, and and it's just there. It's there strictly for the viewer. Like, that main character did not see it. And I'm constantly, every horror movie does this, and I don't get why no one has said, what are you doing? Like, you're just scaring the person in the theater. You're not scaring your character, who is the eyes of your viewer. What are you doing? And I never understood that. Books don't do that. If you read, everything you read from a book is from the point of view of the character, and they carry you through that. So it's like, that whole thing is kind of weird to me. But yeah, I mean, it is. It's about setting that emotive vibe, getting them to fall through. And also, on top of that, I know that, like, this kitsch, it's like a kitschy thing to say for the past whatever years now. Like, I don't like this book. The characters were all unlikable. Well, fuck you. Like, characters can be unlikable. I mean, don't tell, like, nobody. I'm not gonna go have drinks with Patrick Bateman from American Psycho because he's a good guy. It's a great book. He's a great character. What they need to be is understandable. You don't even need to be empathetic with them. You need to understand their plight. And if the writer does their job, it doesn't matter if they're likable or not. You're invested because you want to see where this goes. Like, this whole, well, the characters aren't likable. What a sad state of affairs. I don't even know the people the reviewers who say that. I doubt they even have friends that are likable in real life, but they're going to say that about books that they read. It's crazy. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't either, man. Most of the people that I know are unlikable. So,
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
And then people's like, well, I like Bob. And it's like, yeah, you spend 24 hours with me, you'll change your mind.
Everybody's unlikable. Except for Michael is pretty cool. Michael's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Bob, you and I are very unlikable. You're very unlikable.
I know.
I was going to say, apart from Josh Malerman, is there a fucking likable person in the universe anyway?
There are a lot of sweetheart writers, man. There's a lot of guys I love, a lot of gals who are fantastic people. But they're also writing really edgy, not typical stuff. And I think that, that was the thing with small town horror. A lot of the criticism on small town horror was the characters weren't likable. Well, true. They're not supposed to be necessarily likable, but they're supposed to be people. And, I don't think you go about your day going to the post office and the grocery store and wherever else you go and go, that's a likable person. That person who waited. No one does that. These are people who have got their foibles, who are gray characters. And I believe that every character is a gray character. They're just in that middle zone, and they make decisions on a minute by minute basis on where they're going to go in their lives that dictate who they are as people. And that's how we live in reality. And, I'm fascinated by that. So, to the readers who need likable characters, watch a Disney movie, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like, real life is real life. Don't read my shit. Watch Snow White. Well, that's not very likable either, I guess.
I mean, this is what makes it interesting, and this is why we relate to them, because they are all morally grey. I mean, the most morally virtuous is probably Tig, but they are all, yeah.
And not to give stuff away, but it's the characters at the end of the novel. There is a cyclical nature. Well, that's not even the right word. They all get kind of what's coming to them, right? And with Tig in that story being the one character who, back when they were kids, says, "Hey, let's not do it this way. Let's help. I'm trying to give shit away, but like, let's do it." And then as an adult, trying to be the person to go, "I want to fix this. She was always trying to do the right thing. Her story ends. She's really the only one who kind of gets out, right? Everybody else is kind of, again, not giving it away, but everybody else has their own demons to deal with because of how they've behaved. So while you may, as a reader, say, I don't like these characters, take a step back and go, for who these characters are, do you appreciate their outcomes? Do you appreciate where they end up in this story? And I think that's a better, more fair question to ask as a reader and say, okay, well, now this whole Shakespearean tragedy makes sense when I look at it that way. I think readers, writers have learned to write. I think we've gotten to a point in this society where readers need to learn how to read again. I see so many readers who pick up a book. It's like, I read the first page. I don't know if I'm going to like this. Will I like this book? And they post this thing. Or it's like, I picked this up and it didn't meet, it wasn't what I expected. And that always shocks me because I don't know if I ever expected anything in a book I've ever picked up, ever. Like, it's a name on a cover, it's a title. I don't know, maybe I'll read the back flap and I'll take it home and see what it is. I never went into that going, this better have unicorns, because if it doesn't, 1 star. And readers, they just don't know how to do this anymore. Like, people can't read anymore. They don't know how to read. That's sad. It's sad. Can you imagine going in and picking up a book with an expectation? Shame on you. Shame on you if you have an expectation picking up a novel. God damn it. Like, now I'm pissed. I don't know.
I've always said that sometimes a book didn't, I thought it was going to be different. Okay, that's on me. That's not as like an expectation. It's like, well, based upon what I see on the back flap, I thought this was going to be a little bit different. I wasn't expecting shit. But going back to where you're talking about characters, I love the word, like, describing characters that we want to read is compelling, because it is not a neutral word. It is not negative or positive. It is higher up than that. It's like, that's what I want to read. If I encounter a compelling woman, I'm probably going to try to meet her, because that's somebody who I'm going to be interested in. I like seeing people who are compelling, that are interesting, that I can relate to. It's crazy.
Think about it. Think about your friend circle. Think about the people that have been in your lives. Think about your relationships with people. Likability, honestly, is pretty low. It's commonality, it's intrigue, it's attraction, it's degradation, it's all that fun shit. Likability is out the window. So every idiot who writes into fucking Goodreads and is like, these characters aren't likable. Well, I don't know what your friend circle looks like, bro, but like, clearly not good if you're writing 15 pages about why you didn't like my novel on Goodreads. I don't know. But you get my point, right? Like, people don't work like that. Don't expect characters to work like that, right? Jeez, I'm in a mode right now.
I think as well, as a kind of response to people who say this isn't what I expected, it's like, okay, well, fucking write what you expect. You fucking do that then. If it wasn't what you expected. Shame on you for bringing expectation.
Like, what do you want me to do? Like,
yeah.
I've written, I don't know, man. Like, what is it? I'm 20 novels. People read my books. People will comment. They're like, I read 16 of Ronald Malfi's novels, and this one's a bit of a slow burn character story. I'm like, where are you coming from? I'm not writing like high-end science fiction tentpole Hollywood concept novels. Like, I'm fucking slow burn character stories. That's what I do. You've read all my books. You know that going in. It's crazy. Learn to read. This is, you do like that. Remember when we were kids, I used to have that little rainbow star that said, the more you know. Like, this is my public service announcement, I think, to the middle-aged youth of America. and Japan.
They did the same thing with movies. This movie was bad. It's like, oh yeah, 200 people got together and spent $1 million to go, let's make the shittiest fucking film we can think of. No, you didn't like it. That's all that matters, is that you didn't like it. Mm-hmm. It may not be a good film, but it wasn't bad. You just didn't like it. I probably won't like it either, but now I'm really interested in checking it out.
Well, we are coming up to the time that we have together today, but I wonder, as one of the final questions, what is the best and what is the worst writing advice that you've ever been given?
The best and the worst writing advice I've ever been given is write every day. It's the same for both. I mean, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but it's true. I used to write every day. Now I don't, and I will. Like I said earlier, I do about a book a year on my contract. I will squander 8 months of that just sitting and thinking about stuff, and then I burn out the novel in, I don't know what's left out of 8 months, 4. So do the math, I guess. And so I write it like that. I think writing advice in general can be kind of shitty because everybody's got to work on their own thing, and I'm always a little bit loath to give writing advice because I don't want to disenfranchise any one person by saying something that doesn't comport with the way they do something. I read voraciously. I've always read voraciously. I read bad books. I read good books. I read mediocre books. Reading bad books is great because you learn what a bad book is and what not to do. Right. And when I write, I've been doing this for 20 something years. I did used to write every day, and I used to work a day job, and I would come home and I'd sit down at the end of the night and I would write 25, 30 pages a night, and realizing, if you just do 10 pages a night for a month, that is a 300-page novel at the end of the month. In a month. Just do it. Do the math. I think I'm right. But my point is, like, if that's where you are in your life and in your burgeoning career, that's the advice I would say to you. If you're someplace else, it's different from. I don't think I'm giving advice to anybody who's mid-career, right? So the advice would be for somebody who's starting out, and that's what I would say. You're young, you got time. Write as much as you can, read as much as you can, and just learn your craft. You cannot build a house if you don't know how to hold a hammer, right? You can't fucking pave a driveway if you don't know how to use. I don't know. That's a bad analogy. I don't know how to do that. I guess I'm a paving machine, whatever, right? I don't know, you put quarters in it. I don't know. But yeah, you get my point. Like, this is your trade. So treat it like that and respect it and be the best that you can be in it. And motherfucker, if you're going to self-publish something, hire an editor. I think we can all cheers to that, right? Like, editors are, come on. You need an editor. You need an editor. So, I don't know. I could talk about that forever, but that's my thing.
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, yeah. Well, the next book that you have coming out is The Hive, so we're hoping to chat again in a few months about that. But as a way of a preview, why should people pre-order it, and what is it about?
You should definitely pre-order The Hive. It is my most ambitious book. It is a rambling 760-page novel. So here's where the Hive is. It's about a suburban community that, after a storm comes through and scatters these like random household items on people's lawns, they begin obsessing over these things. And the novel really intrinsically is about obsession, addiction, this sort of addictive culture that we live in now about focusing on things that we have in our hands. And what they do is they realize that the end game of what they're doing is to bring all these items together to create a machine that will do something. I won't give away the end of the book. But that's really where it focuses on. And again, this is a novel that I wrote 12, 13 years ago. I wrote it was a 1,000-page draft novel. I sent it to my agent. She read, and this is a terrible marketing. I'm not selling it here. She read the first quarter of it, she's like, Ron, this is not working for me. Put it in a drawer. So I stuck it in a drawer. It sat there. And over the years, I've had friends of mine who are in the industry read the book, and they were like, you got to do something with this. So I realized it needed to be reworked. But I always did have an affinity for the story, and I always kept thinking about the characters in it. And it's like 10 main characters. You're in their point of views throughout the whole novel. And then they develop this sort of hive mind where then the chapters start to blend, where their chapters and their minds and their thoughts bleed into each other's chapters. It's pretty unique. And it just got to a point where I felt comfortable and confident that I'm the writer to write it better. And that's what I did. I think it's better now. Hopefully. I hope it's better now. But yeah, so The Hive, it comes out April 14th. There's, it's on NetGalley, so you can get the arcs there and review it. If you're a NetGalley person, I think it's on Edelweiss as well. But yeah, I mean, this is, I'm very excited about it. This story was with me for like over a decade, so I'm happy to have it finally out there. And it's so big you can hit your kids with it, so it's nice.
It sounds fascinating, and certainly not a fast-paced action novel. So for those expecting that,
it's extremely boring. Extremely boring.
All right. Well, where can our listeners and viewers connect with you?
I'm on all the social media platforms. My website is ronaldmalfi.com. If you're interested in checking out the band stuff, that is veerband.net. And you can buy a CD and a t-shirt there and then show up to a book signing. And anybody who shows up with Veer gear at a book signing gets a special treat. Usually they have to buy me a drink, but yes. Yep,
I mean, what a treat. Who would not want to buy you a drink? There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's become the thing, so we'll see.
All right. Well, do you have any final thoughts to leave our listeners with?
Oh, gee. No. I think I've rallied the troops. We've gone out there. Bob's silently laughing. He's like a mute in a box of glass. I can see him there laughing, not with his mute button on. It's great. No, we're good. You know what? This was great. And also, thank you guys for this award for this book. It's very nice.
Yeah, thank you for writing an amazing book, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
You got it. Let's do it again.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Ronald Malfi on This Is Horror. Join us again next time when we'll be chatting to Justin Benson, Aaron Moorhead, and Addison Hyman about their brand new movie, Touch Me. And if you would like to get that and every episode of This Is Horror podcast ahead of the crowd, please do become a patron at patreon.com/This Is Horror. Not only do you get early bird access to each and every episode, but you can submit questions to every interviewee. And at the moment, you can become a patron for as little as $3. But soon we will be raising the prices just a little bit to help keep the lights on at This Is Horror and to help me do what I do. But if you lock in today, you will be able to become a patron for the original price, and you will be able to keep that price for as long as you are a This Is Horror podcast patron. We have plenty of exciting conversations coming up on This Is Horror. A number of returning guests like Eric LaRocca and CJ Lead, as well as some brand new interviewees that we will be announcing very shortly. So if you like the podcast, and if you want to help support the podcast and help me do more This Is Horror podcast, the best way to do so is patreon.com/This Is Horror. Okay, before I wrap up, a quick advert break.
From the host of This Is Horror podcast comes a dark thriller of obsession, paranoia, and voyeurism. After relocating to a small coastal town, Brian discovers a hole that gazes into his neighbor's bedroom. Every night she dances and he peeps. Same song, same time, same wild and mesmerizing dance. But soon Brian suspects he's not the only one watching, and she's not the only one being watched. They're Watching is The Wicker Man meets Body Double with a splash of Suspiria. They're Watching by Michael David Wilson and Bob Pastorella is available from thisishorror.co.uk, Amazon, and wherever good books are sold.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This Is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio.
Well, that about does it for another episode of This Is Horror. But before I go, I would like to end with a quote. And today's quote is from Octavia E. Butler. You don't start out writing good stuff. You start out writing crap and thinking it's good stuff. And then gradually you get better at it. That's why I say one of the most valuable traits is persistence. So there you go. Keep writing, keep getting better. Don't give up. And with that said, I will see you in the next episode with the incredible Justin Benson, Aaron Moorhead, and Addison Hyman. So until then, take care of yourselves. Be good to one another. Read horror. Keep on writing. And have a great day.
This is Horror Podcast.